Today is episode 50 and another Ask Dr. B episode.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, DDers, I am so glad that you could join me today because I'm celebrating. I have 4 special things to share with you as we move along in this episode. So first, today is my 50th podcast episode, and it's a really big deal for me. Why, other than the obvious milestone? Well, because if you had asked me earlier this year what my professional plans were, launching a podcast show wasn't one of them, let alone doing 2 episodes a week, 2 to 3 weeks into my initial launch. It was a pretty ambitious undertaking for someone who was so completely new to podcasting, and it still is in many ways. Yet every time I receive an email from you telling me how much you love the show, or how something I said rang true for you, or that the show is really helping you a lot, it means the world to me to know all of that, and it keeps me fired up to continue to provide you with what I believe is important content. So thanks for letting me know that what I'm sharing with you matters to you and is making a difference in your life. That's a win for you and for me, which leads me into my first special thing that I have to share with you. I have a gift for you. I'm gifting you my mini course, The Magical Power of Wins, in the hopes that you'll become more able to understand the power of wins through the content of that course. Plus, I would love to read your comments in the course itself under each of the videos as to what you learned, how you're going to be applying the information, and you'll find a link in the PDF transcript as well as in the episode description. I really hope that you're going to take action and claim your gift of the magical power of wins. It'll be available as a free gift to you until my next Ask Dr. B episode, which releases on Thursday on the 19th of October. And in reviewing the download statistics, it is very clear that you want to hear more about executive function, where to start when there's so much that needs your attention now, and you want relief from the stigma, the shame, or the moral issues that are thrown your way just because you have a differently yet wonderfully configured brain. I have gradually been introducing more and more episodes about executive function and executive function skills to serve your needs. I see that more information continues to come out about executive function and those skills, and it's about time. However, when I read what others are saying about executive function, it still doesn't fully explain, to me that is, about how to develop the skills. Rather, many of the articles talk about what tools to use if you have these executive function deficits. And what I find interesting is that without many of the executive function skills, it's very difficult and oftentimes impossible to use the tools that are being suggested. It's definitely a catch-22 situation. That leads me into the second special thing that I have to share with you. I'm seriously considering rebranding the name of my show because I don't feel like I'm talking about you harnessing your ADHD power. Rather, I'm talking about topics that are beyond your ADHD, such as executive function skills, self-sabotaging behaviors, and how change can actually happen for you. So the new name I'm considering for my show is Beyond Your ADHD with Dr. B. I would love to know your thoughts on the idea of my rebranding my show and the name that I'm considering, for the reasons I'm considering it. I've included a link in the PDF transcript as well as in the episode description for you to make your thoughts known to me. I would really appreciate hearing from you, and thank you in advance. I'm looking at the list of executive function skills that are needed to live a productive and a successful adult life in today's world. And it occurred to me that there's something that you need to know before you can develop the solid foundation of the executive function skills that you're missing. And what's that? Well, I feel it's a very clear understanding of what the process of change is, because it's definitely a process, and how it takes place, and what you have to achieve in each of the stages of the process of change so that you can continue to move forward with a map of sorts until you've achieved your change and you're able to maintain it without effort. You heard me right. Maintain it without effort because you've adopted it. It's just who you are, and it's just what you do at that point without any extra effort. Remember the saying from the last few episodes? For things to change, you have to change. I'm going to share a little bit about the stages of change according to Dr. Prochaska's trans-theoretical model. That's a mouthful. He's a professor of psychology and developer of the trans-theoretical model of behavior change beginning in 1977. That's been a while. His model is based on the principles that have been developed from over 30 years of scientific research and studies, as well as powerful principles and processes of change from the leading theories of counseling and behavior change. I trust that you'll find the information about this model helpful in identifying where you are in your own process of change. And of course, there will be a story, some action steps, and a favorite quote of mine, as always. So let's get back to the trans-theoretical model, or TTM as it's known. Much easier for my mouth. First of all, its name implies that it's an integrative biopsychosocial model that conceptualizes the form of intentional behavior change. That's a mouthful too. In simpler terms, his model brings together biology, psychology, and social issues as they relate to intentional behavior change. I want you to think of change on a continuum rather than you change or you don't. You go through stages in the process of change, and these stages are not all neat and tidy either, especially with ADHD or executive function deficits. You might be moving forward and then need to circle back around through a previous stage before you can move forward again into the next stage. I'll give you a brief overview of the 6 stages of the TTM and then go into a little more detail about each of them before we transition to today's story. So, the first stage is pre-contemplation, where you're definitely not ready to change, and you don't intend to take any action in at least the next 6 months. The next stage is contemplation, where you're getting ready to consider changing, and you intend to take action in the next 6 months, but it's still not happening. The next stage is preparation, where you're ready to take action, but it isn't until somewhere in the next 30 days. The next stage is action, where you've made obvious and intentional lifestyle changes in the last 6 months. The next stage is maintenance. That's where you've been doing the new behavior for more than 6 months. And the last stage is adoption. This is where you've been doing a new behavior for 2 years or more, and it's a permanent part of your lifestyle. Are you identifying where you are currently with some of the changes that you've wanted to make in your life? I hope so, because it isn't as simple as the Nike statement, just do it. Today's episode is all about answering the questions you have about issues or challenges that you experience as an adult living with ADHD or executive function deficits, and offering you hope, real hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
And now back to change. I recall talking about whether or not you were ready for change or ready to change in a previous episode. If you want to make changes or have changes in your life, you have to know that you're ready for those changes, ready to make those changes now, if now is when you want the changes. That would mean that you've gone through the pre-contemplation and the contemplation stages, and that you're in the preparation stage, which means that you intend to take action in the immediate future, which is usually within the next 30 days. What I think is great about this model is that even when you're contemplating, you're changing. So nothing is a waste of time in this process of change. It all fits together very nicely. This TTM also integrates elements of Bandura's self-efficacy theory. And I've talked about self-efficacy in a previous episode as well. Self-efficacy has to do with your belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations or to accomplish a task. Your sense of self-efficacy can play a major role in how you approach your goals, tasks, and challenges. Obviously, if you don't believe that you can achieve your goals, then you can't. Or as Napoleon Hill said, whatever the mind believes, it achieves. So you have to believe that you can achieve your goal. And to have that belief, you'll probably need to know that you're competent in the skills that you need to achieve your goal. Your competence is going to lead you to have confidence, and that confidence will help you to move forward toward the achievement of your goal, which to me means that you need to learn whatever it is that you need to learn. And you need to learn it so that you can feel confident that you're competent. And then your self-efficacy is going to be solid, which is going to help you when you want to make successful changes. That's a lot of stuff. Looking back over some of the changes I've wanted to make in recent years and actually made and sustained, this is pretty much the process I went through. I just didn't think about it in this more formal way at the time. So what are you supposed to do when you feel that there's so much that needs your attention right now and you feel overwhelmed with having to decide where to start? What that means to me is that you know that you have to change a lot of things and you don't know where to start. Well, the reason I'm talking about the process or the stages of change today is because I feel that you have to understand more about what you actually want to do or need to do before you just jump in and attempt to do it. Does that make sense? You need some guidelines and perspective on what the process of change actually is so that you'll know where you are in the process and not get frustrated with yourself, or less so, I hope, because you know that where you are and what's happening is normal for that stage of change, at least for you. Hope that makes sense. So here's a little more information about the TTM, change, ADHD, and executive function deficits. Stage 1, pre-contemplation. If you're in this stage, you might wish to change, but have no immediate plans to do so, which is fine. Why? Because you might not feel inclined to put out the effort once again because of all the past failed attempts and thinking to yourself, what could you possibly expect to be different this time? In other words, why would this time be any different than all the other times that you tried to change in the past and you failed? The assignment you might be given in this stage is to think at least once a day of all the benefits that you can expect from changing whatever behavior you're trying to stop or start. And from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, why would you even spend a few minutes a day thinking about the benefits of changing when you have mountains and mountains of thoughts and experiences about how trying to change just doesn't seem to work out for you? If this was me, to even get me to think about it once a day, I'd need to have some evidence that showed me that this time could be different. Something that points out what I was doing all the previous times and how what I would be doing this time is different and will lead to a better outcome for me. Otherwise, I don't think I would even spend a little bit of time each day thinking about the benefits. What would the point be? How about you? Stage 2, contemplation. If you're in this stage, you might be thinking about taking action, but you aren't quite ready or you don't know how to get started. This is a time when you're open to new information, but still not ready to take any action. You might want to do a bunch of research, and it's possible that you could even get stuck doing the research and not be moving forward to the next stage. The assignment you might be given in this stage is to identify and amplify your internal motivators for change. These would be things that are uniquely important to you. Again, from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, many of you don't have internal motivators, and you've relied on external motivators to get you moving in whatever it is that you've wanted to do. So it's possible you'd want help at this point to identify an internal motivator that would be significant enough to work for you, since this is so important to tipping the scales in the direction of change. If this was the Dr. B of the past, most of my motivators were external, and I would definitely want help identifying an internal motivator that I could use for leverage for change. Stage 3, preparation. If you're in this stage, you're getting ready to take action, but still not quite there. You're more confident, decisive, and committed. You've probably developed a plan and maybe already taken a few small steps. The assignment you might be given in this stage is to troubleshoot your plan and create an if-then scenario, or more of them, so that you'll build your confidence in getting ready for a positive outcome this time. Again, from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, if you jump in too soon because of your impulsiveness and you aren't really ready to change, you could be setting yourself up for failure, not success. If this was me, I would definitely want to be part of a support group at this point, or have a coach or a mentor or someone to be accountable with, so that when I set the date and time that I plan to begin my change, that I'm not in it alone. Stage 4, action. If you're in this stage, you're beyond just thinking about changing, and you've actually begun to do some things differently. Could even be doing a lot of things differently in this stage. And even if all of what you're doing in this stage are small steps, they're still steps, and they're building momentum towards your goal. The assignment you might be given in this stage is to substitute your old ways with healthier environments, situations, and people. The idea is to stay very present with the new actions that you're taking and why you're taking them. That good enough reason. Again, from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, if you don't have the support that you need during this critical time of just beginning to take the action that you've been building up to, it's going to be a real problem, in my opinion. And because consistency is most likely a challenge for you, you need to know what it is that is going to help you to stay consistent and what's going to derail you. And then you need to take steps in advance to protect your investment up to now. If this was me, depending on the change I wanted to make, I would be removing anything from my environment that reminded me of my old ways, and have photos all around my space reminding me of why I'm making this change. In my case, I've used photos of a much younger me in many rooms of my space, and they are the first things I see in the morning, and I still use them. This helps me connect with the part of me that needs me to stay consistent and make the changes that I committed to make. That part of me is counting on me. And for me, that makes a difference in my consistency and my motivation. Stage 5, maintenance. If you're in this stage, you've been successful in staying in a consistent action with your new behaviors for at least 6 months. The assignment you might be given at this stage is whatever is going to keep you strong, motivated, and focused. That's going to be different for each of you. You would be asked to be integrating your change into your social life and your sense of identity, into who it is that you feel and believe that you are now. And again, from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, this can be a dangerous stage because it requires consistency as well as foresight to look ahead to what potholes might derail you and know how to successfully avoid them. This can only happen when you can look ahead, which is an executive function skill. There are many things that could cause you to relapse in this stage and fall back into an earlier stage. And if that happens, you're going to need to reboot and keep moving forward. It's just all part of the process of change. If I anticipated finding myself in this situation, I would think ahead of how it is that I want to handle any situation where I could possibly relapse or have a slip. How would I want to speak to myself and treat myself at that very delicate moment? I would want to be there for myself with a full heart of loving kindness and compassion. And the final stage, stage 6, is adoption. If you're in this stage, it means that you've consistently and successfully continued your changed behavior for at least 2 years, and you feel good about what it is that you're doing now. The assignment you might be given in this stage is to assess how you're feeling about this success and what's next for you. Again, from an ADHD and executive function deficit perspective, you would no longer need to be using skills to look into the future about this in particular, because the future would be now. You would have achieved it and live it as the only reality that you know, living in the moment, so to speak, like you do about so many other things. At this stage, I personally would be celebrating myself in a meaningful way and feel proud of what it is that I accomplished. I would review my journey of where I started and what it took to get to my change goal. I would use that information to help me with my next change goal, and it would help me feel more confident at the very beginning because I have firsthand knowledge of my own success. I have some interesting statistics that I want to share with you. They're actually kind of sad. I read that roughly 20% of people needing to change an unhealthy behavior are actually prepared and ready to do so. To me, that means that the other 80% need to get prepared and ready to change, meaning go through those earlier stages of change, which are actually very important and deserve to be respected as such. Puts a different spin on change, doesn't it? And that only 15 to 20% of people ever make it to adoption. That statistic makes me really, really sad because it tells me that the majority of people don't have what they need in order to make the changes that they do want to make, or at least that's the meaning I put to this information. Tying this into a previous episode where I talked about first and second order change, to me, until you get to the adoption stage in this model, you won't have achieved second order or more permanent change. That's a lot of time spent preparing for and practicing your changes before they're actually adopted and permanent. And the good news is that if you're consistent and persevere, they're going to become a part of your new normal way of life. I know that from personal experience. I've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy to learn to make the changes that I needed to make because I was tired of living a limited life. Perhaps many of you are also tired of living a limited life and are also going to have to invest the time, effort, and energy necessary to remove the limitations in your own lives and make the necessary changes unique to you. If so, the sooner you do that work, the sooner your life gets easier, happier, and more productive. I listen to many adults talk about the lost time or the missed opportunities, and I don't disagree that there's a lot of that. And the longer you wait to make the changes, the more lost time and missed opportunities you're adding to your history. None of us can turn back the hands of time. However, we can move forward with determination to have the best possible life with the time that we have. And tying in another previous episode, the one about being a feeling-driven person, I believe that you're also going to need to access the kinds of feelings I talk about in that episode to carry you through with your changes. You're going to need to feel like it when it comes to making those changes. One way to feel like it is to use your wins, hence my gift to you. You can shift your state and your feelings by celebrating your wins. You seriously can. I talk about using the celebration of your wins to raise your mood and shift your attitude into something more positive, and it works. Paying attention to what's going well instead of what isn't expands your positive feelings and gives you the lift that you need to keep going and to generate more wins. So celebrate them all, big and small, with a full heart of appreciation for all that is right about you and what it is that you're doing. And please, Don't shortchange yourself by thinking it's pointless or it's stupid to reward yourself for things that you're supposed to do, like feeding yourself or saying hello to someone or paying for what you get at the store. That couldn't be further from the truth. If these are your issues, are you really going to make yourself wait until something huge happens to celebrate? And does something huge happen every single day? Probably not. It doesn't for me. But the kind of wins I'm talking about can and often do. And from what I see, they're an absolute necessity to getting yourself out of the emotional ditch of whatever ails you and into a better attitude and a better way of living. And based on the feedback I get from the students in my Adventures in Achievement program, this regular practice of celebrating their wins is changing their lives for the better. So what's it going to be for you today? What are you going to celebrate? Maybe you've decided to risk asking the questions you've had for years, but you never asked. That's certainly a win. Perhaps you've chosen to cultivate more patience with yourself and with others. That is definitely a win. Maybe you've decided that you're tired of pleasing others before yourself, and you need to think about your own needs a bit more than you're currently doing. That's a wonderful win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them, big and small, and none of this half-hearted celebrating. You've got to mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. You want your acknowledgement and your celebration to register in your neurology with a power that'll move you and shift your state. Many of us need a higher level of stimulation or intensity for these things to register. So what? If that's you, give it to yourself and exaggerate your celebration so that you can actually feel it and have it benefit you. And listen, you're not broken. You're not defective, and you're not less than. You're you. You have gifts and talents that may be different from others, but valuable nonetheless. You're a precious human being whose value is a given, because I'm not talking about you as a human doing that most of society views you as. You may be missing some skills, and skills can be learned. You may need to make some changes, and you either will or you won't. It's up to you. If you're willing to invest the time, effort, and energy, these things are going to happen for you. I know this is true because my students are learning skills they've been missing for most of their life, and it's amazing to share in the transformation of their thinking and behaviors and aha moments and what it's doing in their life. That leads me into the third special thing that I have to share with you. I've talked about some of the critically important things that you need to learn in order to make changes and live the life you want for yourself. It's clear to me that there are many different points along this journey where you really need support, encouragement, accountability, and whatever answers you need right then and there to keep you going towards your goals. I definitely don't see this as a solo journey at all, which is why I decided to make some changes to the enrollment process for my innovative program, Adventures in Achievement. I've repurposed the wait list so that as soon as you get yourself on the wait list, I'm going to be reaching out to you to find out what your current challenges are, what your goals are, so that we can determine if this program is right for you. And if it is, I'm going to offer you the opportunity to enroll in the program right now at the current pricing, instead of waiting until the public relaunch of this program near the end of this year, which is going to include a price increase due to the new content about executive function and executive function skills that is formally being added to the program. All of the current workshops and coaching calls have these executive function skills woven into them so that current members don't have to wait to benefit from these life-changing skills. So, there's two benefits I see to enrolling now, and that is, first, you don't have to wait to start learning the executive function skills that you're missing, and you can start improving the quality of your life. And second, you can freeze your membership costs at the lowest possible price that they're ever going to be. This program is definitely the place to be if you want help understanding what's been holding you back and want to learn the skills to break free of your stuckness and start living the life that you've only wished for or dreamed for. In the words of a current student of mine, Tuesday was World Mental Health Day, and October is Learning Disabilities, Dyslexia, and ADHD Awareness Month. Couldn't help but take a moment to reflect back to a year ago at this time when I first started this journey. Crazy to me to review what it is that I had written in the intro I posted here. Never could I have imagined what the following months would bring. Truly grateful for the opportunity to finally learn and understand the reasons behind the challenges that I've experienced throughout my life. Prior to last year, I never would have thought to attribute these challenges to ADHD and executive function deficits. I feel like I finally am coming into consciousness and into my own with all that we've been learning here. In my own words, it's a safe space to face yourself and your current challenges and limitations and to tell the truth about what you really want to be doing in your life. That way, I can help you to learn the skills that you're missing so you can do whatever it is that makes your heart sing and become the person who can have that life. And you're not alone in this. There are millions of us adults in the same boat needing to learn many of these same skills. And I'm in the boat right there with you. My life might look pretty good to some of you who are struggling with the things that I no longer struggle with, but that does not mean that I don't struggle with things, because I do. In fact, lately, there is a lot I've been struggling with, and it's providing me with tons of lessons and opportunities to practice self-love, self-compassion, and self-acceptance, because anything less is sheer foolishness. The mold situation is wrapping up this week, and every time some part of the treatment happens, it impacts me a lot. That's just the sensitivity of my system. And hence, this podcast episode is being released late. I'm doing the best that I can, and that has to be good enough because I can't do any better than I'm doing. I want to, and yet I can't. Maybe you can relate to my situation with something in your own life that's challenging you right now, and that you're doing the best you can under the circumstances, just like I am. And that's all you can do, just like me. How your brain, mind, and body works is the uniqueness of you. And if how you're put together currently is disordered, it doesn't have to stay that way. Your uniqueness doesn't have to be a limitation. It can be your strength once you understand you and what you need to live as your best self. It's my hope that you're going to continue to get more and more of what you need here. Let's transition to our story about Glenn. Glenn had an advanced education, a business to run, employees to manage, a family to participate in, and a personal life to manage. Other than his advanced education, Glenn hadn't been doing so well. He did well in school because of the structure and the very clear expectations of him. However, once he left school and needed to create the structure and the guidelines and the expectations with his professional and his personal life, he was a mess. And it wasn't because of his ADHD symptoms, because those were pretty well managed. He was fairly attentive to the details of his life, very rarely had impulsive moments, and his hyperactivity had calmed down considerably since he was a kid. However, it was his lack of executive function skills and other missing pieces that were messing with him. Some of what he was lacking were a lot of the facts that he needed in order to make better decisions in both his business and his personal life. He hadn't learned to pay attention to his feelings and what they meant so that he could take the appropriate actions when he felt them. He was very aware of his effect on others, so much so that he was actually quite codependent in his own decisions, choices, and actions, which left him with worse treatment that he provided to others. He had years of failed attempts and lack of follow-through, which led him to view himself with a very negative sense of self. And he was overwhelmed with everything that didn't work in his life and had no idea where to start or how to proceed. And this was depressing to him. He'd reached out for help on several occasions, but the help he received didn't really help him in the ways that he needed, and so they left him feeling even worse about his situations. Some background facts. When there is so much that needs your attention, it's often very difficult to see how to prioritize everything and slowly make your way through one thing at a time or in themes when it's possible. Albert Einstein said, "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking that we use to create them." To me, that means that you can't change the situations of your life with the same mind that created them. You have to change your mind or have another mind available to you to bounce ideas off of and help you to see things differently and come up with a different approach to your outstanding problems. You know, we often are just too close to our problems, and we've been looking at them for so long that we miss what's right there in front of us, but we can't see it. Yet others can. When others point things out to us and we're in the stage where we can be receptive to what they're showing us and they're telling us, it seems all so obvious, many times at least. And there are the processes of change, as well as the stages of change, that need to be understood and implemented to successfully progress and attain the desired behavior change. If you relate to Glenn's story, here are some of your action steps. Focus on determining which stage of change you're in for starters. Then determine a list of things that you know need doing and you're feeling overwhelmed about. But please don't try to do anything with them yourself. Follow through on getting the kind of support you need for yourself so you can have a person or a community to lean into for the answers, encouragement, and accountability that you're most likely going to need. Self-management of all those feelings that are likely to arise as you begin to unwind all that you're facing, a little bit at a time, please, and ask for skills to manage the feelings and the thoughts that are coming up for you. Again, you are most likely going to want to have some consistent support as you make your way through all of this to the outcomes that you're seeking. There's one more special thing I want to share with you, and that's connected with it being ADHD Awareness Month. I'm excited that this year's International Conference on ADHD is being co-hosted by ADDA, which is the Adult ADHD Organization, and CHADD, which is for children and adults with ADHD. And this is co-hosting for the very first time in history. Instead of having to decide between attending the ADDA or the CHADD conference, that decision has been removed. You can attend this one conference and benefit from what both organizations have been providing to the ADHD communities for years. So if you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, or you're able to get there, the conference is going to be held from November 9th to the 12th, and will bring together some of the top clinicians, educators, and resources all in one place for you. Pretty cool. You'll find the links to get your tickets in the episode description and in the episode post on my website. You know, you might be wondering why I'm talking about this conference on my show, especially when I haven't talked about any other events or resources on my show other than what I've created for you. I'll tell you why. Early on in my career, I was a frequent speaker and attendee at both CHADD and ADDA conferences for a number of years, as well as the San Fernando Valley chapter coordinator for CHADD for well over 15 years, and I served on that professional advisory board as well. I gained a lot of insights by presenting and attending and being of service to my local community, and in part, those experiences have helped me to formulate my own ideas and the direction that I've taken my work in today with my Adventures in Achievement program. What I also gained by attending these conferences is the knowledge that I'm not alone, which was huge. I know that many of the adults I speak with feel so isolated and alone in their struggles, and you won't feel that way at this conference, that's for sure. And one of the greatest things about being a presenter at the ADHD conferences was that I stopped being afraid of presenting, because the level of acceptance is so much greater there than outside of the ADHD community. I could just be me and share what I knew, And that was the greatest feeling for someone like me who was so very, very afraid of getting up in front of a lot of people and sharing my knowledge. So at the very least, check out the links and learn more about this first time in history opportunity in case it's something that calls to you, as well as check out the link to claim your free WINS course, as well as the link leading to your opportunity to find out if joining the Adventures in Achievement program right now is for you. I don't want you to miss out on anything that I've shared with you today. A favorite quote of mine. Anonymous says, "Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is it time for you to start releasing the false stories about yourself so that you can become the person you were meant to be in the first place? I hope so. That's about it for today's episode about a prerequisite to developing executive function skills and the stages you go through to accomplish that. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. I do hope that you'll take some positive action because for things to change, you have to change. And that means taking action, like checking out the episode links so you can benefit from all the resources I share with you in addition to this podcast show. That is, if that's of interest to you. Remember, there's a PDF transcript of this episode in the resources. Plus, I would love to get to know you in the community group that I created on Facebook and interact with you there when I go live. So, if you benefited from today's episode, take action now and share this show with your friends and family. Perhaps even rate the show or even write up an honest review of this episode so that I know what you think of the content. Whatever you're willing to do, whatever you're willing to take action on today is going to ripple out into the world and impact the course of your life, as well as that of others that you may never know about. And if you don't want to have to remember to look for new episodes, just subscribe. And the newest episode will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays and Thursdays. So thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.